today Haiti, Haiti or land of the mountains. Native Haitians were pre-Columbian indigenous people of the Americas. They were called Taino, the good people. The Taino named their land Haiti, meaning land of mountains, a term that would later evolve into Haiti. Haiti is the third largest country in the Caribbean, surpassed by the Dominican Republic and Cuba, which is the largest. And it's larger by some margin. Cuba has 1,009,884 square kilometers, while Haiti only has 27,750 square kilometers. When Columbus first saw Haiti and the entire Hispaniola island, he thought he had found India or a fast route to Asia. After the death of revolutionary leader Toussaint Louverture in 1802, his principal lieutenant, General Jean-Jacques Dessalines, proclaimed himself Jean-Jacques I, Emperor of Haiti. Unfortunately, he ordered the killing of most of the whites of Haiti. Descendants of African slaves make up 95% of Haiti's population. The other 5 are mulattoes, descendants of French planters, and African slaves, plus some white people sprinkled like salt. Haiti also has a small population of Middle Easterns, descendants of Syrian and Lebanese people who came to Haiti in the 19th century. In the 18th century, Haitians developed elaborate tables of genetic descent, dividing mulattoes into over 100 shades of black and white. This ranged from the Secatra, which were 7/8 black, to the several varieties of San Meles, which are only 1/16 black. Technically, mulatto is someone who is half black and half white, but when you put it in percentage, it's not half and half. Only about 10% of all Haitian children enrolled in elementary school go on to a high school, and Haitians love to gamble. Its popularity is a result of the Haitian belief that so much depends on the fancy of the gods. During voodoo ceremonies, Haitians implore the gods to reveal winning lottery numbers. Unfortunately, the people that run the lottery do the same thing. Cockfighting is a traditional sport in Haiti. You know, the bird, cock-a-doodle-doo. The roosters are fed raw meat and hot peppers soaked in rum to make them aggressive and tough. The winner could take home almost $70, which for some people is the equivalent of an entire month's pay. Haiti is the most mountainous nation in the Caribbean, is one of the few countries in the world where the destruction of the original woodland is almost complete, unfortunately. A muddy brown ring surrounds the country's coastline, where topsoil has washed into the sea. Haiti was freed in 1804. Unfortunately, the United States didn't recognize its freedom until 60 years later in 1862. 80% of Haitians live under the poverty line and 54% live in abject poverty. The average per capita income in Haiti is $500 per year, compared to European countries, which is over 30,000 euros, or the United States, which lies around $33,000. Because of both violence and AIDS, Haiti has the highest percentage of orphans of any country in the Western Hemisphere. Before the 2010 earthquake, the UN estimated there were 430,000 orphans in the country, so having 500,000 orphans is like 5%. A typical worker in Haiti makes only $3 a day. Because jobs are so scarce, approximately 70% of the population does not have a regular job. Those who do have jobs are afraid to speak out against unfair labor or any other bad practices. 80% of Haitians are Roman Catholic, 16% Protestant, and 4% are other. Voodoo, for example, is the main religion practiced alongside Christianity. Only 53% of Haitians can read and write. We are circling back to the fact that less than 10% of primary school kids go to high school. Haiti's national sport is soccer. Haiti first competed in the World Cup in 1974. Gourds were so important to the Haitian people that in 1807, President Henri Christophe made them the base of national currency and declared all gourds the property of the state. Today, the Haitian currency is called gourdes. In the 18th century, Santa Dominica, Haiti was the richest colony in the French Empire and was known as the Pearl of the Antilles. It grew rich mainly through the importation of slaves and through devastating environmental degradation. Haiti is currently one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere. In 1803, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Haiti's first ruler, created the nation's flag by ripping out the white stripe in the French red, white and blue flag, claiming he would rip white people from the nation. The remaining blue and red stripes represented blacks and mulattoes of Haiti. Also, Haiti's coat of arms sits in the center. The citadel is one of the most popular tourist destinations in Haiti. It is a large mountaintop fortress located in northern Haiti. It is the largest fortress in the Western Hemisphere. Author, statesman, and ex-slave Frederick Douglass was an ambassador to Haiti. The country's highest peak is Pic de la Selle, 2,680 meters. One of Haiti's islands, Tortuga Island, Ile de la Tortue in French, was a pirate stronghold in the 17th century. Ile la Vache, Cow Island, lies off Haiti's southern coast and is so named because it was once overrun by wild cows, descended from animals abandoned by the Spanish. Christopher Columbus initially called the island La Isla Española, meaning the Spanish Isle, when he landed here in 1492. Over time, the name became Hispaniola and included both Haiti, which covers the western third of the island, and the Dominican Republic, or Santo Domingo, which covers the eastern two-thirds. Haiti and Canada are the only two independent nations in the Americas that have French as an official language. Though approximately 90% of Haitians use Creole as their primary language, Creole wasn't made an official language alongside French until 1987. Most of Haiti's current citizens are descendants of Africans shipped to the Caribbean to work as slave laborers in earlier centuries. With an area of 10,714 square miles, Haiti is only slightly larger than Vermont, and the US is way bigger with 3,794,100 square miles, or close to 10 million square kilometers. Haiti is one of the least developed yet most densely populated countries in the Western Hemisphere. Its population density is 300 people per square kilometer. Comparable in size to Haiti, Vermont's population density is 26 people per square kilometer. The capital, Port-au-Prince, was founded in 1749 and was named for the Prince, a French ship anchored in the bay. When Christopher Columbus landed at what he later named Hispaniola in 1492, the people greeted him with offerings, unaware that he was claiming their lands for Spain. By 1508, the Hispaniola's native Arawak Taino population had fallen from around 500,000 to just 60,000 due to the devastating social, political, ecological, and immunological effects of Spain's arrival, aka they sickened them to death. 10 years later, less than 3,000 Arawak Taino remained alive on Hispaniola. Pirate activity off the northern coast of Haiti weakened Spanish control of Hispaniola, and in 1697, Spain gave France the western third of Hispaniola, which is today's Haiti. The left left the remaining part of the island, the Dominican Republic, under Spanish control. Haitian revolutionary leader François-Dominique Toussaint earned the nickname Toussaint l'Ouverture, the opening, which referred to his ability to find an opening in the enemy lines, as well as opening the way for Haiti's independence. Haiti's former president, François Duvalier, Papa Doc, created the National Security Volunteers in 1957, a dreaded security force. It was also called the Tonton Mascoute, after the Haitian folk figure Tonton Mascoute, Uncle Knapsack, who carried off small bad children, at night. Toussaint Louverture was the best-known leader of the Haitian Revolution. In 1801, the ex-slave led nearly 500,000 Haitian slaves against Haiti's French colonialists. Their eventual victory was the first successful slave revolt and helped establish Haiti as the first black republic. After a betrayal from the French, unfortunately, Louverture died in a French prison. Throughout the mid and late 20th century, Haiti experienced a brain drain as educated professionals and business people left the nation to escape brutal dictators. This exodus weakened Haiti because it was left with fewer and fewer skilled workers to run businesses, health centers, government offices, and schools. Today, 80% of Haiti's people live in rural areas, despite it being the second oldest independent nation in the Western Hemisphere, first being the United States. From 1804 to 1915, more than 70 dictators ruled Haiti, and in December 1990, Jean-Bertrand Aristide won Haiti's first free election. Unfortunately, he had to flee the country a year later after being ousted in a military coup. He was president again from 1994 to 1996, and then from 2001 to 2004, when he was ousted again via a coup. In Haiti, there's one hospital bed for every 10,000 inhabitants. There are only about 8 doctors and 10 nurses for 100,000 inhabitants, not in general. Although for the population it must feel like that. The life expectancy for Haiti is very low, 50 years for men and 53 years for women. Haitians have the lowest caloric intake in the Americas, which has led to chronic and often fatal diseases. An estimated 25 to 40% of children under 5 suffer chronic malnutrition. Anemia affects 60% of Haitian children between the ages of 6 months and 5 years. And being one of the poorest countries in the world means hunger is a part of everyday life. When early Spanish explorers encountered a female Haitian ruler named Anacana, or Golden Flower, in 1503 who resisted them, they killed many of her people, arrested and finally hanged her. The first recorded smallpox outbreak in the Americas occurred in Hispaniola in 1507. Families who live in the country spend almost 60% of their income on food. The poorest groups spend more than 70%. Haiti has been ranked as one of the 5 most corrupt countries in the world. The infant mortality rate in Haiti is as high as 70 deaths per 1,000 births. The birth, with maternal mortality rate also being high, about 500 deaths per 100,000 births, compared to 10 to 15 in Europe or the US. We have the infamous 2010 earthquake that hit Haiti and left it as a desolated country. Unfortunately, even before the earthquake, only 54% of Haitians had access to sanitation facilities, toilets, indoor plumbing, sewer systems. Less than half had a regular source of safe drinking water. Unfortunately, most rivers in Haiti are polluted with human and other waste. Diseases such as hookworm and typhoid, which are transmitted by contaminated food or water, are common in Haiti. And in the early 1980s, the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention traced a number of the first AIDS cases in the US to Haitian immigrants. 80% of schools in Haiti are private, and religious groups run many of them. The remaining 20% are state-run. Students learn their lessons in both French and Creole. Haiti has only one public university, the University of Haiti, in Port-au-Prince, founded in 1944. Most wealthy students attend college outside of Haiti. Only about 40% of school-aged children attend school regularly, and less than 10% of that number goes to high school, as stated earlier. Women were granted the right to vote in 1957. Unfortunately, many women still suffer from discrimination and mistreatment. The Haitian justice system rarely punishes men for abusing women. The typical Haitian woman will have 5 children in her lifetime, and that's because the Roman Catholic Church discourages birth control, and also it's not readily available. Less than 20% of married women use birth control. In the devastating earthquake of January 2010, more than 200,000 Haitians died and millions were left homeless. It was the strongest earthquake to hit the region in more than 200 years. It devastated the country. Before 2010, it was estimated that between 5,000 and 10,000 Haitian children were homeless. After that, the number increased tenfold. Unfortunately, most of them end up being trafficked. During radical ex-priest Jean-Bertrand Aristide's second term as president, the government established voodoo as a state religion, along with Catholicism. Haiti's entire annual budget is around 300 million, that's less than Jeff Bezos' weekly spending, and less than that of many small cities in Europe or the US. And things don't look good for the future. From the 1980s, the economy has been shrinking steadily. Thousands of Haitians were ruined when pyramid investment schemes collapsed. While Haitians lost about $200 million investing in these scams, the co-op founders acquired millions on the proceeds. In 2003, the US Coast Guard picked up 2,000 Haitian boats with people trying to reach the US shores, more than from any other Caribbean nation. Unfortunately for them, most were returned to Haiti. Over 40% of the population is under 14 years of age, creating a high dependency ratio. And unfortunately, more than 10% of Haitian children die before the age of 5. Haiti has the highest incidence of HIV/AIDS in the Western Hemisphere. 1 in 50 people are infected. Half of the children in Haiti are unvaccinated, and just 40% of the population has access to basic healthcare. Approximately 1% of the country owns more than 50% of the nation's wealth, and it's estimated that 20% of the Haitians live outside the country, mostly in Miami, New York, Boston, and Montreal. More than half of Haitian imports came from the United States, and more than 80% of its exports go to the United States. Unfortunately, the country is a hub for trafficking of illegal drugs between South and Central America, Europe, and the US. The country has 14 airports. Only one of those has paved runways. It has 4,000 kilometers of highways. It has 4,000 kilometers of roads, with only 1,000 kilometers of those being paved roads. The term reste avec comes from the French language rester avec, to stay with. Most human rights experts agree that the worst abuses of Haitian children involve young people called reste avec, or poor children who work as house servants for urban families. Their parents hope that host families will feed and educate their children, but unfortunately some hosts abuse the reste avec. Experts estimate that almost 500,000 Haitian children are living in this form as practically slaves. In 1963, Hurricane Flora killed approximately 8,000 people in Haiti, the sixth highest death toll from Atlantic hurricane in recorded history. There are very few cars in Haiti, few people afford one, 5 in 1,000 people afford a car. There is no railroad in the country. In the cities, people often take communal taxis and colorful public buses called tap-taps. Women's abuse has long been a problem and unfortunately is used as a political weapon. After the 2010 earthquake, some men handing out coupons for food distribution would demand intimate favors in exchange for food. And the news keeps getting worse. Experts claim that it will take decades for Haiti to recover from the 2010 earthquake. Almost 80% of the capital needed rebuilding, not from zero, but from, as officials declare, below zero. Zero is where you have a plain field that you can build on. Below zero is an occupied field that you have to clean. The debris were there. Recovery plans included completely rebuilding basic sectors such as health, agriculture, governance, and security, plus the infrastructure. And that's all for today. Haiti has a long and turbulent history with an even more turbulent present. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe. I'm Alex, and until next time, beware of falling apples.